Welcome to Small Talk Daily for Tuesday, September 23rd, 2008. This morning we're going to continue on with our blog server presentation on Seaside. And what we're going to do is build our first component and a couple of ancillary components. This morning we'll just get the root component of our application to display. And the main lesson for today is the component-based assembly nature of Seaside applications. So to get started, let's open a browser. We want to go down to the code we loaded in yesterday. Didn't really look at it yesterday. So Seaside blog has a namespace and the domain model, a post and a user object, and a simple storage object. And all it really does, if you look at it, is store things into a collection that it holds internally. So that's the basics of what we have so far. We're going to create our components today. So let's go to class, new class, and we'll define blog root UI. And instead of being descended from object, we want this to be from seaside.wa component. And it turns out WA component is the basic superclass of all Seaside things. We're going to give this two attributes. So list component and menu component. And the idea here is that a root component will display the blog server itself, but to do that it will use a list component for post objects and a menu component for the menu of options. So let's say OK to that. Now that we have the root, we need two additional things. So we're going to define blog list UI and make sure that comes from the same place, seaside.wa component. I'm not going to give it any instance variables yet, and we need the menu component. So again, new class, blog menu UI, and again change this. So WA component again. And now we have our three pieces. The one we're going to work with is the root UI. And we're going to add a little bit of housekeeping here. So we're going to go to the class side, and we're going to add a method called canBeRoot. And that'll say, yes, this component is allowed to display at the top level. And then we're going to add a class side initialize method. And I'm going to put in an executable component to make my life a little easier. And all I'm going to do in this is register this thing as an application. Now this code will fire when this thing gets loaded in from the disk as a parcel, say. But right now we're just going to execute it. Now we're almost done. If I bring up the browser at this point and hit refresh, you'll notice I have a blog U component, but it doesn't do anything. And of course that's to be expected because I haven't got any rendering code yet. So I need to add that. But before I add rendering code, let's clean up this initialize method a little bit. We want to create our two components. So assuming I could spell it, blog list UI new, and then the menu component, blog menu UI new. So I have my two components initialized, and that means that when I add some code for them to render, the root UI will render not only whatever is in its own render content, but those two components as well. So let's make sure that we have something actually rendering though. So to make sure something renders, let's go to the blog root UI class and we'll add a new method, render content on. And now we've added this. So we have a little bit of rendering code that will tell it to put out a heading called blog server. And then here are the two important pieces as far as getting this to be a functional blog server. I put out a div, and inside that div I have a class and an ID with the menu component. And then a second div with the list component. Now those two components do not yet know how to display anything, but when they do, they will display. So I have my rendering all set, and now let's bring the browser back, and we'll hit refresh. And there you see it displays my heading. Nothing else yet because nothing else knows how to do anything. but we're well down the road to building our blog server. So we'll leave it there for today. We'll get past this to displaying things from the list component, the menu component, over the next few ones of these screencasts. And in the meantime, have fun with Smalltalk.